Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. So, joining me today is Harrison, all the way from North Carolina. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes, yes. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. The sun is shining and the birds are singing.
That's that is a win in my book every day.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today to share anything that you would like.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I can cover anything from business to, I was a fireman for 10 years, had a house fire a year and a half ago. So I'm an open book. Feel free to ask whatever you'd like.
All right, so we're going to start from the beginning, share as much or as little. Tell me more about you and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Harrison Barron, born and raised on Long Island for the better part of my life. Moved to North Carolina, specifically the Charlotte area, about 3 years ago now. In that time, pre-move, I started a business called Barron Media Group. Since then, we've rebranded to Growth Generators, specifically helping businesses build their online digital presence,
Mhm.
and really just kind of simplifying technology the best we can for people. Recently, we've kind of stepped into a accidental, I don't want to say blessing, but I came from the IT sales world, and it turns out that there's really not a lot of people out there helping IT salespeople. So I've recently found a niche with helping IT salespeople and getting them, teaching them basically everything that I used to do really, really, really well. So it's been really, really cool. It's been an absolutely incredible experience. Just helping people, getting people, literally changing people's lives with the income that they've started to make and close on deals, which has been really, really cool. And it's applicable to a lot of industries, but that just, niching down really does help quite a bit in the growth online. And that's kind of what I've been doing and spending quite a bit of time on as of late.
Yeah, that's really cool. We were talking before the interview started about, I don't know, me struggling with social media and with what I'm doing. I know there are so many people who are also struggling. They have a
Mhm.
passion for what they do, but they're just, I'll speak for myself. I don't know how to create a proper website or email list and all that stuff. Is that something that you also do really well in?
Yeah, so there's kind of there's always two kinds of people in this world. There's the doers, the people that are going to go out and they're just going to do everything, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they're going to try to figure it out and they're going to get whatever that task is, completed for the most part. And the one thing I tell people constantly over and over and over again, because this is a conversation I have obviously regularly, is the simplest way to go about things is try. Um, and the reason why I say try is because a lot of people are really worried about, you know, especially in the beginning stages when it's you, right? And you're not a business yet. You're kind of still kind of getting your footing. Things become expensive fairly quickly. And it's just because you're paying for time and labor, right? There's a lot of work that goes into building a website. There's a lot of work that goes into a ton of different aspects of kind of everything. I don't want to say it's just websites because that would be selling it very short. But what a lot of people don't realize is you're doing two things. You're paying for somebody's expertise and you're paying for somebody else's time, and those are valued individually between people. So the nice part is, and the reason why I tell people this is to go try, take your take your best effort with it, and then from there uh go out and go do, go try to build it and see how far you get. Some people will get surprisingly far. Other people will get, the opposite of really not making much headway at all. But you don't. It's a lot easier to not only sell people, but it's also a lot. It's a lot more of an easier understanding to explain to people, hey, if anybody could do anything. There's enough information on the internet that there's really no reason why anybody couldn't do anything. But the big difference is understanding, like, I had a house fire. Could I rebuild my house? Of course I could rebuild my house. There's enough YouTube videos, there's enough resources on the internet. Would it take me a while to learn? Of course it would take me a while to learn. But
Mhm.
taking a good faith effort at practicing and learning and doing all of these things is only going to make you a significantly better person and understand the value that you're paying for, which I think a lot of people have a few degrees of separation about, and that's fine. But things take time. Work takes time. To do things correctly and effectively take time, and that's why I always encourage people, like, take a stab at it in the beginning. If you're an established business, absolutely do not do it. But if you're trying to start it out yourself, at least learning the basics, and we were just talking about podcast editing, at least learning the basics of these things. I'm not saying you need to get good at it, but knowing, so that way when somebody says, hey, this is your bill, it's never a question of, is it too much? It's how much time did it save me, and is it equivalent to what I spent? Right. And that's really what you're paying for. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is what they're paying for. You're paying for somebody, obviously, to do the work, to spend the time on it, but you're paying for it to get done in a manner in which you could never do it otherwise. And that's where a lot of, in my opinion, this kind of stuff happens, or starts from.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. I love that you mentioned to try, because when we don't know how to do something, it's very easy to not even try it, to have someone else do it for us. I've
Mm-hmm.
had the opportunity of trying and failing and trying, and it's not to criticize ourselves so much, because it's everything is a learning process.
Sure.
Everything in life. Yeah. Um, I'm sorry to hear about your house fire. I
That's okay.
can only imagine what that was like. It must have been hard.
Yeah, horrible. I did lose two of my dogs in the house fire. Um, I've This is probably the first time I've actually spoken about it where I haven't cried. So that's a win in my eyes. I'm not much of a crier, but that was and look, I live a good life. I really can't complain. I have great friends. I have great family. The support system that I had, and the relationships that I've built over the course of my life have been amazing.
Mhm.
But that house fire sucked. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. That was I shouldn't even say arguably, that was without a doubt the worst thing that I've ever had to go through. And
Mhm.
if my dogs weren't in the house, this would be a very different story. It's just stuff. But and when you have the idea of, look, it's just stuff. Does it stink to lose your stuff? Of course it stinks to lose your stuff. But and I know if I speak on behalf of a lot of people, your dogs are your kids, and we unfortunately lost two of the three dogs that we had in the house fire, and we were only gone for about 45 minutes. So that was soul crushing, and soul crushing is an understatement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, we won't stay on that for too long. I can tell that it's still hard to talk about. Let's go to some more exciting stuff about how you help people. What are some common mistakes that people, mostly businesses, make when it comes to how they advertise on social media?
Um, oh, that's a good question, actually. So I would say the first thing is paralysis analysis. I'm a firm believer in. Sorry, my dogs are sneaking in here.
Oh,
Um,
good.
I just saw a little head poke out. Hi, Penny. You want to come say hi? But a lot of it is paralysis analysis. There is no secret sauce for every business. Every business on this planet does something differently. It has different products. It has different pricing structures. The list kind of goes on and on with it. And the reason why I mention that is because a lot of people are really, the word hung up is not, I guess it's probably the right term, but a lot of people get really hung up on starting. And the problem with that is, if you're going to start, right, there's no instructional book, but you have to start. You have to, in the words of Gary Vaynerchuk, which I don't particularly love him, but he's decent, is fail and fail fast. And that is really, really true. The faster you can kind of fail and fail forward, hopefully, and learn from the mistakes that you've made, the better off you're going to be. And lot of people don't realize that that's kind of what you have to do. You have to fail. You have to fail fast. And when you do fail fast, you learn a lot. So and the reason why I mention all that is because when you're getting into social media marketing, people want the recipe for success, which is great. I would love to be the one that gives them the recipe for success. But the problem is the recipe for success doesn't actually exist. There is things that you can do to become successful, but 99% of it comes down to testing, knowing your market, knowing that you have a good product that can actually be sold to people. And that is the vast majority of kind of making money online. Otherwise, a lot of people forget or they don't understand, right? If you can help everybody, you can't help anybody, because if everybody's your customer, right, you can't market, you can't build ads, you can't target everyone. Think about it, right? It took Facebook, which everybody uses today, the better part of what? I don't know. I would say everybody was probably on Facebook by 2015. It took them a solid 8 years, and they started out with just providing a service to college kids. Same thing goes with Amazon. Amazon started out selling books. A lot of people, for whatever reason, don't know this, but that's where they got their success from initially. And then they went out and became the kind of retailer that everybody knows today, which is great. Same thing goes with all of these other areas. You have to know your market. You have to know, you don't know what's gonna work, but you have to make sure that you have a good product. And when you have all of these things and you pick a really solid niche, you can go out and you could test social media strategies and content creation strategies and all of these things. And it might take years of trying, but when you find success, that success becomes nearly infinite because it just scales, which a lot of people have a hard time understanding, right? Growing over time. And as long as you do it over and over and over again, right, you'll grow big enough to where you're happy. And that's the big difference, in my opinion, with social media marketing of what somebody else might say and myself, because there is no real secret sauce. It's just doing the right thing over and over and over again and trying a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because all of us can use social media for good. And I've heard some bad things about social media. Uh,
Sure.
it depends on the person. I think some people let other people's experiences impact their dreams too much.
Sure.
Yeah, do you follow? Can you give me your insight on that?
Yeah, I think I would agree, and the problem that I see more often than not, and it's actually happened to several good friends of mine, is what they think is a good idea is actually not usually a good idea. And usually what they think is a bad idea happens to usually be a pretty good idea. Um, but for whatever reason, people have a really hard time taking advice. And depending on who it is, you may get information that you never knew you needed. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people, they're either hesitant to take advice. There's usually some overlying reason as to why they don't want to take advice.
Mhm.
But when you have a trusted friend, advisor, associate, whatever that person may be to you, they're going to be able to see things that you can't see, or you don't see, or you just fail to see. There's always this separation in it. And the reason why I say that is because even Tiger Woods has a coach. Aaron Judge has a coach. Rihanna has multiple coaches, right? Jay-Z, multiple. It doesn't matter who it is. All of these great people, or people that we think are great, all have gotten, they hire coaches because the coach is going to do exactly what the name says, coach them through the process, right? Whether that process is good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to be able to see things that you couldn't normally see being in the trenches. And I think that how this relates back to it is friends and associates, they're going to see stuff that you might not see for the lifetime of you owning a business. And if you're struggling in certain areas, especially if you're a business owner, this is probably some of the best advice I could ever give.
Mhm.
If you're struggling in certain areas, you really need to take the time to listen to the people around you that see things that you might not always see. And if you're struggling for a long periods of time, take their advice. What's the worst thing that happens? You waste a little bit of time trying something that you don't know if it's going to work or not work. But
Mhm.
on the flip side of things, you might develop or figure out something that you never thought was possible, prior. And that, in my opinion, is really where the magic happens, because exploring, one or two of those options might be extremely profitable to your company, just because that's maybe what your audience wants, or it's something you haven't tried yet and you didn't think about it, but somebody from the outside saw it and was like, hey, this is a really good idea, maybe it's something we should explore. And then it turns into something.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you're so right. You're so, so right. It takes a kind of courage that all of us know we have, and to be humble. If we're
Yep.
not humble, then we think we know everything. We're not ready or willing to accept others' views on things. I'm so blessed that I am so humble. I thrive on others' opinion because it's not that I'm pleasing them. I'll give you a
Sure.
scenario, an example. With my podcast, I recently picked two separate YouTube video intros to add to the interviews. What did I
Sure.
do? I posted the two of them to my Facebook group, and I'm asking the people in the group, people
Mm-hmm.
who've been on the podcast, what do you guys think? What are your opinions? And I got 5, 7 different suggestions, and I took that and I worked with it. And that's something I
Sure.
always do. And I think we all can build that kind of trust in people.
Yeah. And it also takes a lot of experimenting in time, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
to paint the picture of people, right? I do very well for myself now, and I didn't at one point, and I have no problem admitting that. And the reason why I'm saying that is not to flex or anything like that, but as of late, I kind of stumbled into this niche of helping these IT business owners make more money through teaching them sales, through teaching them, I have a new video going out today on how to overcome the 6 most common sales objections, right? Like,
Mm.
price is too much, got to speak to my partner, things that you'd hear in just about every industry, right? And it took me 5 years of making videos. And I'm not saying 5 years of making videos like as if I did it every once in a while. I was extremely consistent. There was a period in time that I did 120 videos in 120 days. I would wake up, start my day with an hour or two of watching other people's content, making a YouTube video about whatever I was teaching, and it was more generic digital marketing, an extremely saturated market. And what happened is I would go out and I'd make this content. I made 100. I think between both of my channels, I probably have like 600 videos. Between my agency and my personal brand of harrissonbaron.com. And all of a sudden I made one video. I'm like, let me just make this video. It's a video that I want to make. It'll probably help somebody. And and over the course of a year, it got like 2,000 views, which is not earth shattering, but it's a very, very specific niche of the market. And
Mhm.
it's fairly competitive, not super competitive, but I made it. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, the algorithm is actually telling me what it wants me to make. So then I made another one and another one. And now all of my videos, I went from getting maybe 10 videos over 10 views over the course of a week to 50 to well over 100 views in the matter of not even 24 hours. Like it was that much of an aggressive change,
Mhm.
but it took me 5 years to stumble into success, right? The amount of times I almost quit was astronomical.
Mm.
And now all of a sudden it's like I can't make a video that does bad, right? As long as it's in this niche, because I'm probably providing, I shouldn't say probably, I'm providing more value than any of my competitors out there in the market. And
Mhm.
a lot of people forget that things like that exist all over the place. I happen to have, and even if you think that there's not, think of how many colleges there are in this world. Just colleges. You don't have to get involved with anything else.
Mhm.
There are so many, right? So why? why wouldn't everybody just go to the online school and attend the only best college there ever is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do some people become doctors? I was supposed to become a biochemist. That was really what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to go become a biochemist. I'll study for 6 or 8 years. I'll maybe get a PhD or definitely a master's in biochemistry. It's something I really, really wanted to do. And science kind of came pretty naturally to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to get a teacher. She was the sweetest lady in the world. Nothing against her, but she had a really, really thick accent. And for whatever reason, my brain could not learn from her. So in this case, I happen to just change my major because I realized that this is probably a little more work than I really wanted to do in college, which is okay. But a lot of people like I have friends of mine that are like, I wouldn't start a business doing that because the market's already so flooded. How many watch manufacturers? Every watch does the exact same thing at this point. We all have this little device. I'm holding up a cell phone for the people that are listening, right? That tells us the time. To this, I mean, like, and the coolest part is everybody has the exact same time in your area. It's not like, oh, my watch is a few minutes faster, a few minutes slow.
Mm-hmm.
But there's people making watches out there still, and they're growing $1 million businesses. There's no reason why you can't do the exact same in a competitive industry.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out your target market and go attack them relentlessly, and you'll be shocked at what you discover to be possible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I needed to hear what you just said because when I was first starting my podcast, I'm like, what's the point? This person
Yep.
is better. This person is interviewing this person's doing that. And then I had a different podcast, which I ended up completely deleting every episode. And then I started this one. I'm like, I'm not this person though. I don't have their dream or vision. I wasn't raised like they were. So I went with my heart. I think when we go with our hearts and experience, we could try to compare ourselves. It's just not gonna work if we do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree quite a bit. I think a lot of people get really hung up on, these ideas that they have or what things are supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if people knew what things were supposed to look like, we would have the most fuel efficient car ever. And we would, if we were supposed to know what it looks like, right? But you have to start with iteration 1 and work your way forward, right? If you look at a car that was made in the 60s or 70s or 80s, it looks very different than what they're making today.
Mm-hmm.
And some would argue to say that some cars maybe in the olden days are the greatest cars that ever made, right? But that is a purely subjective statement. Cars back in the day might get 10 or 20 or 30 miles to the gallon. You have the new Toyota Prius that gets almost 60 miles to the gallon today, and they're still getting better. The best version of anything is still a long ways away, and there is so much room to go out, make a better product, compete with people, and then you have other things that take into account too. Like, just because something exists or you think something's the best, right? And not to get political, but there's Bud Light just did that thing and they lost billions of dollars from it, which now leaves a gap in the market for somebody else to come in. And then that's the best part about capitalism. There's all of these ways and these things that people get to enjoy, and when a company messes up, somebody else gets to take advantage of it, and time will tell, right? I mean, Amazon's becoming oversaturated with crappy products. There leaves a better option out there for another company to create a competing product that vets all the products to make sure that they're amazing. Who knows? But I'm just trying to portray ideas like, just because you think somebody else did a good job with it, there's going to be a time that they mess up, right? How many different, I don't know, coffee mug manufacturers are there in the world? How many different sunglass manufacturers are there in this world, right? And I'm just picking up things that are on my desk here. Think of how many, I got vitamins here, by the way, if you need help sleeping, magnesium glycinate, fantastic for sleep. But how many vitamin manufacturers are there in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
People lose concept of, just because there's somebody else in the market, there could be two players, there could be 3. There's enough room. There's enough food for everyone to eat. And a lot of people get really caught up on that idea.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to focus a little bit on YouTube. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I've been so terrified of YouTube until recently. I
Sure.
recently just started sharing my videos. Uh,
Okay.
First, I didn't know how to use it. And second, there were trolls on social media. Some are very nasty. Like people
Sure.
need to really have thick skin to be able to do anything on social media and be
Yep.
able to take good criticism and not let it destroy our visions and dream. What do you notice that people are doing wrong with YouTube, and what are they doing right when it comes to working with YouTube?
I don't want to say that anybody's doing anything wrong or right. I don't think that I have that much knowledge in YouTube
Mm,
to weigh in there. What I
mhm,
will say that I constantly see as a regular problem is, and this comes a lot more so from like my podcasting experience, but if there's 3 main components to YouTube, and podcasting is very similar, but podcasting is very one dimensional, right? It's really only audio, and then there's video to support that. Where YouTube is video and audio and storytelling, and that's where a lot of people get messed up on. If you perfect all 3 of them, doesn't matter what story you're teaching or telling, but if you perfect all 3 of them or get them as good as possible, the likelihood of success is infinitely higher than somebody else.
mm, mhm, mhm,
If you're going to slack in one of those areas, the other 2 better be amazing.
mhm,
And if you're gonna have not the best audio because maybe you can't afford a microphone or whatever it is, your video editing skills, right? Your just video in general, and your story has to be amazing, right? If your video is going to suck, but your story is going to be really good and your audio is really good, right? You have to have at least 2 of those 3 to get remotely near success.
mhm. Yeah.
The more you have, the better. The more you have, the higher chances you're going to have to go viral, and the more retention you're going to have, right? Because if we paid $12 or 15 or however much money you're spending in the movie theater nowadays, right, to watch a low quality video, you'd be pissed. The benefit is YouTube is free, and while that's good, it gives everybody the option to get in. And my storytelling was always good, my audio was always good, and my video was always good, but I really lacked a lot in storytelling and bringing something new to the table that other people didn't already have.
Mm,
Now that I've kind of found this new space, there's no stories in that space, so I get to fill that space with my stories. And that's why, at least I believe, I'm growing more than a lot of the other competitors, right? And YouTube, once again, is free, but I'm growing more than a lot of the other competitors in the space, and that's what makes the big difference.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned story because, in my opinion, from my experience, I think people want stories that they can relate to. It
Yep,
doesn't
big
matter
time.
what field or what the person is doing. It could be any niche. But if there isn't a story they can relate to, they're not interested.
Yep. Yep.
Like for me as a podcaster, if I'm watching another podcaster, I don't know if they're doing bragging about things that are nonsense and like I didn't get it. 40 minutes went by. What's the key point in this entire video episode, right?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your podcast. What is it about and what kind of guests do you have on there?
Yeah, so it's called the Brutally Honest Podcast. And I have a variety of guests on there. It is an in-person show. But and that's kind of what I lean towards. I've done a couple Zoom, especially because of the pandemic. I've done a couple Zoom podcasts, but it's a very Joe Rogan-esque style show, and I'm in the process now of either determining whether or not I'm going to do it out of my house or I'm going to go rent a facility to continue doing my podcast. Now, the podcast doesn't make me money, although it did. and by saying it did is because of me being at the time a more generalist marketer as opposed to more like now much more specific in who my target market is. And I'll still work with just about anybody, but I definitely have a very specific market that I know I do a really, really good job at. And I like to help other people for multiple reasons. Obviously more money, but I think it's fun. I think it's enjoyable. I do enjoy genuinely what I do. So
Mhm.
while I won't work with anybody, I'll try to work with as many people as I can to just help them out. And worst comes to worst, I teach somebody and they learn something and they go on their merry way. Um,
Mhm.
but because I was a generalist a more of a generalist, I was able to have a lot of my guests who were on my podcast have some kind of need. And I didn't do this on purpose. I actually kind of stumbled upon it. But I was interviewing business owners and not so much interviews, but my shows were an hour and a half to, a lot of sometimes shouldn't say a lot. Sometimes it was fairly often a 3 hour long show. So I got to really know somebody in that time period. And because of that, it made a massive difference in just being able to grow a business and having people that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. It's kind of always how it's been. And now people are buying more from people they know than they like and trust, but if you still kind of need that know, like, and trust factor, having somebody on your podcast, especially in person for 2 or 3 hours, you begin to know, like, and trust them quite a bit. You cover a lot of stuff in that time period. And I didn't use it as a sales pitching platform, but I did use it as this is now my way of communicating and talking to. And it actually made my old company that I was with, my old IT company, a lot of money because that's where I started. I started in a closet that they had, and we would talk, and it was literally like probably like a 9 by 9 room. It was really not that big. But we would sit down and we would talk, and that opened up a lot of doors for me to talk to people. Now everybody has a podcast. It was much more, I started podcasting in like probably 2015-ish, maybe even 2014. So I was early enough into it that not everybody had a show, and it was very disarming. There was no sale because I didn't sell. I wasn't there to make money. I was there to just have a great podcast. And because I was so focused on them having a really positive experience with my podcast, it actually made sales really, really easy when they were ready to buy. And because they had already known, liked, and trust me, and they came to my office, right, it was the easiest close. Even when I worked for the IT company, right, it was so much easier to sell IT services when the person could come and see the staff. They could see the facility that we're in, the computers that we're working on, how many screens we had, the server closet. Like, I would give them a little walkthrough and they would be like, oh, you guys are legit. Like, you guys are a real company. And that is how I leverage podcasting to make money. I'm not saying everybody should do that because I was very focused on having a great podcast, and it ended up being a great way to earn income, for my old company, my now company, and just sales in general.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. So when is it too much, too fast? An example would be I'm not making money with my podcast yet. Is it gonna be always that way? No, because I'm putting lots of sweat and lots of work into it. But
Mm-hmm.
I find that some people start podcast and they charge right away. I've had so many guests on my podcast saying, "Do you charge?" I said no. And it was just not a good experience for them having to pay to share.
Sure.
I'm not against that, but it depends on the niche. The niche I'm in, it's working just fine. I welcome everybody to share. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I see a lot of business owners charge way more money than they should charge for certain things, and I see a lot of people leave money on the table.
Yep.
Um, you're in business to make money.
Mhm,
Nobody's going to fault you for that.
mhm,
I would say, unless they already have a record of being a reliable podcaster, I don't think you should charge, but everybody's entitled to do their own thing, right? If you have I've seen some podcasts, they charge $11,000 for you to be a guest on it, right? I'm not going to mention which ones it is, but it's a extremely small group of people that would find millions of dollars in value
Mm,
from these podcasts. So for them to charge $11,000 for somebody to get in front of their target market
mm,
is a no-brainer, right? So it really just depends on the show and what value you provide, and also if you plan on monetizing. The people that I have in mind, their business is the podcast, and then they market afterwards, right? They take the podcast, they cut it up into a bunch of little segments, they create marketing stuff for you that you get invited to into a extremely small group of people that have been on their podcast, and they've done well over 100 episodes, right? But they do charge $11,000 to be on the podcast and get this whole marketing package afterwards, right? That supplies you with all this kind of stuff.
mm,
While some people might have just heard the number $11,000 and been like, that is an absolutely obscene amount of money. $11,000, to get in front of your target market is a steal in a lot of people's eyes, right? And if you know that you could just be introduced to those people, and now you're sitting in front of your target customer, right? That only there's no competition in that space other than you, because you've been on their show, and obviously the barrier to entry is quite high.
mm,
It really just varies, and that's kind of the way that their business is structured. So I'm not against charging for it if that's what you plan on doing, but you should have some kind of like, hey, these are going to be the deliverables, and this is what you're going to get, and you're going to get a little bit more than just a recording, and you're going to get invited into this exclusive group. And the barrier to entry is also super high, which is really good, because then you're only dealing with people that have money, right? 11
mm,
grand's a lot of money. So
mhm,
all of these things come into play. It just depends on the value that you provide and the value that your audience sees. And if those merge, you have a real way to make a lot of money, and you can charge just about whatever you want for it. But if you're not there, which is fine, most people aren't, you have to take everything else with a grain of salt. And that's okay. That's more than acceptable too.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, 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 you're right. Whew, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And they do one podcast a week. They're doing $40,000 between two people. And then I'm sure people sign up to become, customers of their digital marketer, marketing platform and all that kind of stuff afterwards.
Mhm,
But that's a real thing that people go through. So really just money, price is just a number. It's the perceived value of it. And the best way I can explain this, I talk a lot about this on my channel, is if a doctor came up to you and said, hey, you need to get a new kidney tomorrow, we can sell you one, but it's going to be $1 million to get a kidney tomorrow, right? And you're going to die the day after if we don't get this kidney for you. I promise you're going to figure out how to make $1 million really quickly, whether that's begging people, taking out loans, maxing credit cards, whatever it is. You're going to figure out how to get $1 million because you're going to die. But if you get a paper cut, you're not going to go to the hospital and ask them to put $1 million Band-Aid on your finger. It just doesn't have, because the value is very different, right? Living versus just dealing with a little bit of pain is very different margins. And I use the most extreme case to paint a picture of it's just value, right? You want to live, you're going to pay that $1 million, but you're okay with dealing with a little bit of pain. A paper cut's fine.
mhm,
That's the big difference, right? You have a broken arm. Okay, some people might go out and find a couple $100,000 to fix that broken arm, and some people might not. And
mhm,
to each their own. But if you were a pro baseball player and you had a broken arm and your whole livelihood depends on your arm, you're going to pay whatever amount of money it is to get the best doctor to fix your arm. Whereas maybe me, who sits on my computer, is going to pay for just a good doctor to come in and fix my arm when he gets time for it and when he sees it
mhm,
necessary, right?
mhm,
Same principles. Price is just a number. It's the value associated with that number that actually determines the value of whatever it is.
mhm. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. This is an amazing conversation, but we do need to wrap up soon. I'd like to hear any final thoughts that you have, anything you want to share with my audience.
If you're a business owner, specifically in the IT world, check out my YouTube channel. I've been putting a lot of stuff on there, Growth Generators, or our website, growth-generators.com. I don't have like a free giveaway. I've made 500 plus videos. If you want to learn more about podcasting, I'm making more stuff about podcasting. I'm reviewing a bunch of headphones at the moment. If you are looking to just learn digital marketing, Growth Generators, I have a bunch of stuff on there. I've done stuff on LinkedIn under my name, Harisson Barron. But follow along if you enjoy the content. Great. If you don't enjoy the content, find somebody that does, because somebody might be a better storyteller for you specifically. And that's what I love is it's just there's so many people out there that are doing amazing things, and you just have to find the ones that work best for you.
Yeah, I'll check out what you're up to on YouTube and other platforms. So on YouTube, is it Growth Generators or is it just your name?
So both. I have just
Oh,
my name, Harisson Barron, as its own YouTube channel, and then I have Growth Generators, as kind of as my agency. It used to be Barron Media Group. Hi, Penny.
mhm.
You want to come say hi? But that's pretty much it. My
Yeah.
dog is begging for attention here, but that's pretty much it. If you want to go follow along, those are the spots to go follow along. If you see me in the Charlotte area and you happen to be listening, feel free to say hello. I'm in there pretty frequently, but
Mhm.
that's it.
Mhm. All right. Thank you so much for your time. This was a great
Hey,
conversation. Thank you.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is a great podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.